For the first time ever, we take you to one of the most inhospitable borders in Sikkim. This is where Indian Army is deployed at an icy plateau, even beyond the mountains to silently protect our borders. As tanks slice through the frozen Tista River and howitzers size up the area, it is the man behind the gun, the most important aspect that protects us best. This is the area that saw nerves of steel being tested around the time of the Doklam crisis. The Wuhan spirit prevails, as do our braves. Abhishek Bhalla and Sanjeev report. The super sensitive India-China border in North Sikkim. Not far from the flashpoint between India and China at Doklam in 2017. This is the place where tanks and troops were mobilized when India and China were engaged in a battle of nerves during the Doklam standoff. Indian Army's T-72 tanks sliced through the frozen Tista River, guarding our borders at an altitude of over 15,000 feet in temperatures that dip to minus 40 degrees in peak winters. A challenge both for the men and the machines, both tested to their limits.
Initially, when you come to this place, it takes a little time to get adjusted to this altitude and the lack of oxygen. But with time, we get adjusted to it, and our boys are fully motivated and they're fully fit to operate at this altitude.
India Today's Abhishek Bhalla and camera person Sanjeev Kumar get exclusive access to the most sensitive border zone for the first time ever. This is the place where China had mobilized its tanks across the border in the Khambazong area, barely 20 kilometers from the international border. Post-Doklam, both India and China have taken several measures to reduce the tension, including the Wuhan summit, where Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the Chinese President Xi Jinping talked about mending fences for a better tomorrow. The army is not letting its guard down. Additional tanks, guns and troops have been deployed even at the height of winters to ensure there is no possibility of any misadventure.
It is very important that we always have the moral excedency over our adversaries, and this is the best way of showing that we are more hardened than you. We can man our post in these harsh weathers also.
With the Chinese People's Liberation Army having strengthened its defenses across the border, India too has made efforts to enhance its firepower, and the army is keeping its powder dry. Though keeping equipment battle ready in these hostile weather conditions is easier said than done.
This tank is built for all kinds of terrain. At this place, we need a little more maintenance to be carried out on a daily basis. So our tank crews carry out maintenance during the daytime, and we keep the tanks switched on at least 4 times in the day and night so that they don't face any mechanical issues.
The 2-month-long Doklam standoff was resolved in August 2017, and the borders have been quiet, but the army continues to guard the borders 24/7, 365 days a year to ensure peace prevails.
At this time of the year, when temperatures are ranging between -10 and -35 degrees, it becomes extremely difficult for these men to carry out their operations in this treacherous terrain. With camera person Sanjeev Kumar in North Sikkim, Abhishek Bhalla for India Today.
This is one of the harshest winters. Temperatures have plummeted to minus 40 degrees. The wind chill factor makes it tougher to survive there. But both the man and the machine are holding ground. Incidentally, the Chinese troops have withdrawn. But as India Today's Abhishek Bhalla and camera person Sanjeev Kumar found out, the Indian Army is well and truly dug in against all odds.
We are headed to the world's highest battalion headquarters, which is at a height of 16,000 feet. We are at a unique location where the Himalayas are ending and we can see the ridge over there. There's a plain plateau where the battalion headquarters are located, where we are reaching. This is the beginning of the Tibetan plateau.
The famous song of Assam Regiment, the troops and their officers are not celebrating but keeping themselves in high spirits. Manning the highest battalion headquarters in the world at a height of 16,240 feet when temperatures dip to minus 40 degrees Celsius, this is their way to fight the hostile conditions. They are guarding the Indo-China border in North Sikkim, where it is not the enemy alone, but the harsh weather and treacherous terrain that needs to be combated. The frozen cold desert at this time of the year is of immense strategic importance.
The highest post in this area is at an altitude of 19,000 feet. This gives the Indian Army the opportunity to maintain a strong vigil on the Chinese activities.
In North Sikkim, the Assam Regiment is guarding the highest battalion headquarters in the world. That is a gateway to the Tibetan plateau, making this a strategic location.
Bunker is uniquely located in the Tibetan plateau, which is across the Great Himalayan ranges. The temperature during peak winters drops as low as minus 40 degrees Celsius.
At 19,700 feet, the Indian Army post in this sector is the second highest in the country. While the roads are crumbling, the Indian Army has managed to create tracks for the movement of their vehicles to the high peaks. But the heavy snow of winters makes these tracks of no good use for the Indian Army. The troops have no option but to walk up and carry out foot patrols, fighting the ferocious winds and knee-high snow across the entire sector in North Sikkim.
We keep a constant vigil of our enemy, of our adversaries, and we ensure that sanctity of the IV is always maintained.
Despite a clearly demarcated border, this area remains a sensitive one, with two sides locked in disagreement and the Chinese often displaying a show of strength. There have been skirmishes in the past as well, but in the recent times, relations have been cordial.
At the time of the Doklam face-off, this was one of the places where the Chinese mobilized its troops. They also moved the tank regiments. But now there is peace and tranquility maintained, but the Indian Army cannot lower their guard. In such tough conditions, as one officer aptly put, the only two things that don't freeze here is a soldier's spirit and kerosene. With camera person Sanjeev Kumar, North Sikkim, Abhishek Bhalla for India Today.
This is the first time that a television crew has reached this difficult area of North Kashmir, of North Sikkim. Joining me now on the broadcast is India Today's Editor Defense, Abhishek Bhalla. Also with me is Lieutenant General D.B. Shiketkar. General Shiketkar commanded a corps at the China border. Abhishek, how difficult is the deployment where the Indian Army is silently shoring up our defenses? Because the Chinese troops seem to withdraw when we hold fort.
Yes, we have no option but to stay in the higher reaches. The highest post in this area in North Sikkim is at 19,000 feet, and the area was completely cut off because of heavy snow, and that's why foot patrols are the only option that the Indian Army has.
And General, in this situation, there is an urgent need to build up infrastructure so that our troops can rapidly deploy while we need to hold ground. The Wuhan spirit melted the Doklam tension, but a show of strength and a show of intent, extremely important to deter any misadventure.
Yes, certainly, Mr. Gaurav Sawant. Let me first compliment you, your channel, and the two, Mr. Bhalla and his colleague, who went all the way to cover this terrain. Can we name any country in the world where the armed forces of the nation are fighting in such an adverse situation and are deployed to this? There is none whatsoever, let me tell you. Coming to your point, straight away question, there's a philosophy of war. Capacity building takes time. Once your capacity has gone up, your endurance goes up. And once your capacity, capability and endurance gone up, your intentions can keep changing.
Yes.
Chinese, sir, they utilize the Cold War period to prepare themselves. When the two so-called superpowers were fighting among each other, Chinese were preparing themselves. And today, they are competing with none other than the only superpower in the world.
And even here,
Secondly,
General, if I could bring you back to the situation at the Tibetan plateau, I mean, look at the Chinese deployment on ground. So they've got 50-kilometer range howitzers that are already deployed, 35-ton, 105 mm light tanks already deployed in this area, long-range missiles, strategic lift aircraft. What's the signaling, sir?
yes, sir, coming back to this point, I was about to come. I'm glad you asked this point. Here again, the Chinese have built up the capacity, which has improved their capability, and now changing their intentions over a period of time. These the gunships or the tanks, they couldn't have been flown by helicopters. They have been building the infrastructure. They have been building the roads. They have been building the bridges. They are building the staying capacity and capability both. And today they are there. Today they are there. After all, why did China did not dare to enter Doklam up to 2017? I've been handling that part of the territory of our country.
Yes.
Of interest. And therefore, I know exactly well how well the Chinese have been preparing. Unfortunately, allow me to say so, I'm not trying to criticize any government, but the fact is, in the last 48 years, we ignored China's capacity building. We thought we will sort out these problems on the negotiating table without realizing, none of these people ever realized that if you are not strong on the ground,
Yes.
you can never negotiate on table forcefully. Chinese have done that. Fortunately, for last about 3-4 years, 5 years time, we have been doing that.
Okay.
And you saw the result. After all, you mentioned, sir, about Doklam. Chinese did not come to Doklam till 2016.
Yes.
But they were building up. They were building up to come into that area after they did not get the helicopter, tanks, and the machinery by helicopters.
Okay.
Why were we sleeping? Why were we sleeping? We were
Okay.
sleeping because of the philosophy of the government, whichever was in power. I don't want to name any party.
But now we are trying to
Then we
catch
will
up,
negotiate
Abhishek.
with them.
Yes, Abhishek. Now we are trying to catch up. Apart from the tanks that are there, T-72s, difficult to maintain them at that altitude, but we're doing it. The howitzers. What about the other infrastructure in terms of roads, in terms of where people can stay, where people can rapidly mobilize?
That's a big problem area, Gaurav. In fact, a stretch of about 50 kilometers can take 5 hours, 6 hours to reach to the forward areas, and crumbling roads and poor infrastructure is really a big problem for mobilization of the Indian Army. But on the other side, there are reports that have been brought to the notice of the government by top brass of the army that since Doklam, the Chinese have enhanced their infrastructure, which has reduced their mobilization time. That's something very, very significant, and we need to wake up to those realities.
And General, that is where India needs to put a lot of you know, a lot of effort. This should have been done as on yesterday, building up infrastructure along the India-China border, whether it's in Arunachal Pradesh or North Sikkim or Eastern Ladakh, where there are two ramifications of China on one side. You also have Siachen, you also have Pakistan.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. You mentioned about Ladakh, Siachen and Pakistan. We must read, Mr. Sawant, in between the line. Over the last about 3 years, the leadership of China has been repeatedly saying that we will be with Pakistan or Pakistan will be with us in the issue of Kashmir and Ladakh, both. They have officially said. So there's nothing to read in between the line. They have made very clear.
Okay.
The signal is very clear. If we are found wanting, again, we cannot blame anybody but to ourselves. Because it is said, if you are not prepared for a war, the best way to prevent a war or a conflict is to be prepared for it.
Yes.
If you are not prepared for a war, you will get sucked into the war at the place, time, and circumstances which will not be of your choosing. We have suffered 4 times in the history of India since 47 till Doklam. Thank God the government reacted well,
Yes.
and Chinese were told to stop wherever they were. Thank God.
Oh,
It means the
absolutely.
preparation
And
was
some
there.
very deft military maneuvering and deft diplomacy. And that is where perhaps India's strength is now emerging. But a lot more needs to be done, because the more powerful you are militarily and economically, the more you can ensure that there is no conflict or misadventure. But now I want to shift focus to the other big story. General Shiketkar, stay with me. The other big story we're tracking here on India Today is what's happening at the line of control. Lieutenant General Ranbir Singh, Army Commander, Northern Command, today confirmed that 5 Pakistani soldiers had been neutralized along the line of control south of Pir Panjal in the past 48 hours. And this is in response to Pakistan's frequent ceasefire violations along the LOC in Poonch, Rajouri, Krishna Ghati, Sundarbani and Bimbar areas. Now, the army commander said India is a step ahead of Pakistan and is giving a befitting reply to Pakistani actions. He also acknowledged the fact that in 2018, it had been one of the most successful years in counter-terror operations, with more than 250 terrorists neutralized. More than 50 had either surrendered or had been arrested during anti-terror operations.
ये मैं आप सबके जरिए सबको यकीन दिलाना चाहता हूँ कि भारतीय सेना पाकिस्तान से एक कदम आगे, अगर वो किसी भी प्रकार की कोई गलत कार्रवाई करते हैं तो उनको पूरा का पूरा जवाब उसी प्रकार उसी दिशा में दिया जाता है.
And General Shiketkar, perhaps that's the strategy India is adopting, strong at the borders with China, offensive in punitive action at the borders with Pakistan.
You are right, sir. We have to take into account who is a bigger nuisance and who could be possibly your bigger adversary. Pakistan has been a nuisance. Unfortunately, for some reason, we have been too soft on Pakistan. They've been too soft. Let me assure you, I have been right 65 war, 71 war, on the line of control as the commanding officer,
Okay.
commander a brigade, commander a division.
Okay.
I know these people backward.
Oh, absolutely.
I don't think.
Perhaps that
I don't think
softness
they will
is
stop.
now, yes, that softness is now going out of India's policy, but we will track that story and keep that for another day. But for the moment, General Shiketkar, many thanks for joining me. Abhishek, that was a brilliant ground report, and keep up with the good work.
Thank
That
you,
is
Gaurav.
all we have time for on India First this evening. Many thanks for watching.